Hi everyone, I'm very excited to be here today to introduce you to all the features we have in our October 2016 release of the Power BI desktop. We have a lot of features to talk about today, but most of them are focused around improvements to our reporting features and our analytics features, while of course we continue to add to the number of data connectors we have and query editing experiences. So the first feature I'm going to talk about is an improvement to our axis range formatting feature. So previously, we had a feature release where you could set the start and end date for your axis. This worked great if you had a numeric range for your axis, but if it was a date axis, the experience wasn't necessarily always the best because you had to enter in a solid number. Now we have it so that you can actually use a calendar picker to be able to pick the date you want on your axis range. So for example, if you have a line chart that has order date and sales on it, and you wanted it to range from, say, just the past year of data, I could go into the x-axis and I can use the calendar picker to pick out exactly what data I want to show. So this data is the last date is in December of 2015. So I'm going to use this to go to 2015, and I want it to range from January 1st, 2015 to December of 2015. And then the chart automatically filters to just show that data. And if I wanted to, I could go in and be even more granular and filter by the time as well. I can manually go in and change the time. Another date-related feature we have for this release is our new date slicer. So our current slicer that we have is great for things like categorical fields where you want to just select a couple of categories you want to see across your whole report page. But it doesn't work that well for dates because you don't want to see all of your dates just listed out there and you have to manually select them. So we made an improvement to our slicer to support dates better. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the filter on my axis so you'll be able to see the filter in action. So I'll remove everything and go back to the defaults for this chart. And then I'm going to use the date slicer to do a similar approach. So first I'm going to select slicer, and now I'm going to add a date to that. Previously, you would just see all the date options listed out. But now, since my field is marked as a date, I have a slider here that I can then use to set my dates. I can either use the slider to drag and drop to whatever date I want to see, or I can use the calendar picker and pick out what I want to see. So I want to see January of 2015. Or of course I can manually enter it as well. In the top right, you'll see a couple of options we have. So you can either set it to be between a few dates, before a given date, or after a given date. Or you could go back to our default list experience that we've had previously. And with this new slicer, it's going to be super easy for you to be able to filter your report page to whatever date range you're interested in. Our next reporting feature that I want to show you is an improvement to laying out your visuals on your report page. Once you have a report that you like and you want to share with others, you want to make sure it looks good. And previously, to make everything align nicely, you would either have to be very precise, select your visual and nudge it a little to the left or a little to the right with your keyboard keys, or you would have to go in and manually set the pixel size and position of all of your charts to align them up perfectly. With this release, we released grid lines and snap to grid similar to PowerPoint to help you do this alignment work. So whenever you're in your report page, you can go to the View tab and you can select to turn on grid lines and see the grid, and then also choose if you want the objects to be freeform placed or actually snap to that grid that you're looking at. So once you turn both of them on, you can see your slicer, your visuals, like your slicer or your line chart, and choose to snap along that grid line to them. And this helps you really quickly and easily align your visuals to look really nice on your report page. This is a preview feature, so you'll have to turn it to see these options in the View tab. You will have to go under File Options and turn on the Grid Line Snap to Grid feature in there. With this release, we've also done a lot of data label improvements. So we've always had for a long time the ability to turn data labels on and off, and some customization like size and color on your charts. But for some of our charts with this release, we've added the ability to rotate data labels, control their position, and the like. So for example, with the column chart, I can go in and add my column chart. Line it up nicely to the grid. And I can choose that I want to see categories and sales amount and turn on my data labels. Now by default, our data labels show up horizontally and have an auto placement to them. But now, and it used to be that you could only do that. That was your only experience. But now I can go in and change, for example, the orientation. Instead of horizontal, I want them to be vertical. So then I can go in and they will all rotate vertically to show up like that. And then I can also choose my position that I want to see them. So, for example, I want them all to go on the inside in. And now all of my data labels are pushed inside the charts. And we've added these features for column and bar and also waterfall charts as well. So you'll be able to use these features in any of those charts to make your data labels show up the way you want. These are also good options if you're trying to show more data labels. For example, in column charts, you're more likely to see more data labels if you turn them vertically whenever they're inside the chart. The last visual related feature we released this month is around maps. We've added a couple of new map formatting options. You can now control proportionally the size of the bubble that are on the map. So if you think the bubbles are too small for your map, you can choose to increase that. You can also turn auto zooming on and off. So let's see those in action. So I'm going to create a map. And I'm going to add countries to the location and sales amount to the size of the bubble. Now a couple of these, I think in general these little bubbles right here are a little too small. So I'm going to go in and increase the bubbles in the bubble card that we've now added to make them a percentage size bigger. And of course I can control these to whatever looks best with my report. I think somewhere along the 26 mark is quite nice. The 30s and 40s seem a little bit big, so I can go down to around 26, 25. And then that just makes all the bubbles a little bit bigger and easier to see on my report. I can also, under the map controls, turn auto zooming on or off. So by default, whenever you cross highlight, we will resize the viewport that you're seeing to show the best bubbles, what we think is the best. But sometimes that doesn't, what we get back from Bing doesn't always make sense. For example, if all of your data is streets in the general area on your map, it might not make sense for us to zoom in and out too much because they're all really close to each other, and you just don't want that zooming effect. So if that's the case for you, you can choose to turn auto zooming off, and then wherever you place the map, for example, I'm going to, for now, ignore Australia, I can zoom in, and now no matter how I choose to highlight, the map will never move to show me Australia. The next group of features are analytical features, the first of which is grouping. Whenever you're building a report, you may find that two categories within a field are better talked about together and therefore should be grouped together in your report. Previously, to do that, you would have had to create a new calculated column using DAX to be able to create all of those groupings together. But now you can do it directly on the chart. So let's take this chart that I already have here. You'll find that in the chart there's an audio section and a music section. Those two categories are very similar, so I want to actually group them together in the chart. So what I can do is I can select, using Control-click, both of the categories and then right-click. You'll see in the right-click menu the option to group. When I select that, a new group is created, and it's now a field in my field list, and it's automatically placed in the legend, and it grouped those two fields together into one and grouped everything else into other. That's the default behavior, but I can also go and change things about that. So if I go into the newly created field, that's the grouping of category, I can click the dot 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 and click Edit Groups. And from here I can group more of the different values of that categorical field together into new groups, and I can also choose if I want the other category to be there or not, and keep everything ungrouped as a separate value. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to not include the other in there. I want to hit OK. The group is automatically updated, so now everything that's not in a group is its own group, and everything is now color-coded correctly. I can use this new field that was created just like any other field in my data set. So for example, I'm going to remove the original category and use that new grouping field as my axis itself. I can also choose anytime I want to create a group for a field just by clicking on that field and clicking the group button. This launches a dialog for me to start selecting fields to group together and creating different groups within the new grouping dialog. The next feature, binning, is highly related to that. So grouping works on categories, but I could also choose to create a grouping on a date or a measure and bin them into sections. So if I wanted to look at data across different ranges of dates or across different ranges of a measure, I can do that as well. So let me show you that in action. If I wanted to, say, look at my satisfaction across different sale sizes, I can take my sales field here and I can click on the dot 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 and select group. And from here I can choose to bin it into different sizes. So I'm going to choose my bin size to be 1,000. And again, a new field is created for me in the field list, which I can use just like any other categorical field. So I'm going to take this sales amount bin field and I'm going to drop it on the canvas. And then from here I can choose to add my net satisfaction value into the value bucket and see the average of that. And now I can see how my net satisfaction varies across different sales amounts. So for example, if I highlight computers, I can see that my satisfaction dramatically goes down as the sale size increases. This month, we've also added a new filter, which is the top-in filter. This allows you to only show values in your chart that are the top or bottom number of a measure in your data set. So let me go ahead and create a table real quick to demo this feature. So I'll add a table that has a couple of fields from my field list, such as product name and sales amount. And give myself a little bit more room for this table. And you can see we have a lot of products here in this list, but really I'm only interested in the top 10 that have the most sales. So I can go into the visual level filters, and typically where you would see in this drop down here just basic and advanced filtering, you now have a third option, which is top in. So I can go in here and I can choose if I want to see the top or bottom. I want to see top. I can enter in the number I want. So in my case, I want 10. And then I can choose what value I want this to be based off of. So in my case, I'm going to use sales amount, which is already in my chart, but I can also pick any other measure that's in my data set. So I'm going to go ahead and drag sales amount into this drop zone, and I'm going to click apply. And now my table has been updated to just show me the top 10 products based off of sales amount. The last feature here I want to talk about is include and exclude. Frequently, whenever you're building a report, you'll realize there are some categories that within a field that you aren't particularly interested in for whatever reason, or maybe you're just interested in a small subset of those. To get this before, you would have to go into your filter pane and select just the ones you want to see, or remove the ones you don't want to see, and this can be kind of tedious. So we've added this month the ability to just be able to write on the chart, include and exclude those data points that you want to see or don't want to see. So for example, in this chart, games and toys only make up a really small percentage of my sales, so I just don't even want to look at those. So what I can do is I can right click on that and I can click to exclude that from my chart. And you'll see in the visual level filters, you'll see this exclude card that was created. And you'll see any values you've excluded here. And you can choose to, by hitting this X, include them back into the chart, or X the whole thing and include everything that you had previously excluded back. You can also choose to just include specific points. So actually what I want is I only want to see home appliance, computers, and my audio group that I created earlier. So I can select just those and right click and click include. And now only those three are shown in my chart. And again, a filter card is created for you, this time for include, and you can see the three things that have been included. So this is just a really quick and easy way to filter down your charts to whatever you want to see. This month we also had 3 new data connectors. The first one you'll find under the Online Services section of the Get Data screen, and it is allowing you to connect to Dynamics 365 for financials so you can pull in any of that data. You'll also find here our new Mixpanel connector, which lets you connect to your mobile and web analytics data from your Mixpanel accounts. The last one, under Other, is our new OLEDB connector. With this connector, we now have support for any OLEDB drivers that you want to connect to. This month, we've also added a query editing improvement to allow support for table parameters in the invoke function dialog. When invoking a function that accepts a table parameter, either a built-in or user-defined function, you will be able to select an existing table as the input. So if we go under Get Data and create a blank query as an example, I can show you the invoke function experience for the built-in table function, table.transpose. And from here you can see that the invoke function experience. This feature is also supported in the Invoke Custom Function dialog, allowing you to reference table queries when invoking their own defined functions. The last feature here is around diagnostics. So whenever you're contacting our support team and talking to either someone on our team or our support engineers, if they ask you for any additional information, you can now pull a lot of that information from our About dialog. So going back to Power BI, you can go under File and select the About under Help. And here you'll see this option that says Copy Session Diagnostics to Clipboard. Once you do this, you'll be able to send that diagnostics information to our support team and we'll be able to help you a lot easier. So that's it for this month. As you can see, we had a lot of features, but we've really focused heavily this time on adding some more report features and also adding some new analytics features that's just going to really save you time whenever you're doing your analysis. So if you have any questions or want to make any comments, you can do it here or in our blog post. And be sure to stop by our community site to let us know what you think of the features.